Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayamutire nashtapraeshu bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavati uttam shloke bhaktir bhavati naistike. So continuing with the discussion on Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita by Srila Goswami, chapter 40th. Prabhupada is in Vrindavan and he's still worried about the Bombay project. So all the leaders at the Bombay project, they sent a letter to Prabhupada to just relinquish the land because it's too much trouble. Sitting in his room at the Radha Damodar temple, Srila Prabhupada read the letter from Bombay and then set it aside. He walked out into the open courtyard. In the last light of day, many birds were chirping, and the devotees sat on the ground on a dhuri, waiting. On a dhari, yeah. Prabhupada sat on the simple raised seat and began singing Jai Radha Mata. He had Pradyumna read, stopping him to explain the point whenever he felt inclined. He spoke of the special benefits of residing in Vrindavan, but warned that one should not come to Dham to do business or to commit any offenses. If, however, a Vrindavan resident did commit an offense, he could still receive the special benefits, provided he remained sticking to the dust of Vrindavan. So, yes, one should not come to Vrindavan or Braj to do any business. This is place for Brajvasis to do their business, not for outsiders like us, and not to commit any offenses against them either. So one has to be very careful, very humble when one comes in. Night fell, and in the dark courtyard, Prabhupada continued lecturing beneath the dim electric bulbs. Visiting pilgrims came and went, watching the Swamiji lecturing in English to his Western disciples. After the question and answer period, Prabhupada walked back to his room, exchanging words along the way with Gaurchand Goswami, the temple proprietor. Some devotees lingered in Prabhupada's room, and many Indians peered through the barred windows, although they had never cared to look years ago, before the room's permanent resident, Bhaktivedanta Swami, had gone to America. Yeah, nobody was there, that room. And now Prabhupada is there, Gaurchand Goswami and Prabhupada disciples are there. So when Prabhupada was finally alone, he began to think of Bombay. Although hundreds of miles away, the occurrences, they were beating on his heart here in Vrindavan. He took out his copy of the agreement he had signed with Mr. N. Then he called his secretary and began dictating a letter to the leaders in Bombay. He began his letter like a lawyer, answering logically point by point. One reason his disciples had given for wanting to give up the land was that the charity commissioner had refused them permission. Because, as we know, charity commissioner was now in team with Mr. N. But it appeared that charity commissioner's permission was delayed, not denied, a small matter. Although Mr. N had mentioned a 6-month time limit for obtaining the charity commissioner's approval, Prabhupada pointed out that the original agreement mentioned no such time limit. Another reason Prabhupada's men had given for wanting to relinquish a land was that, according to Mr. N, they had failed to obtain a conveyance within 6 months, as per the original sales agreement. Prabhupada replied that according to the clause in question, it is our option to resign the contract within 6 months, not the vendors. But the real point was that Mr. N had accepted checks worth 1 lakh rupees as down payment within the 6-month period, and therefore the sales agreement was completed. We consider that he has completed the conveyance and we do not want to resign, but we shall close the deal immediately. Finished, that's all. He's trying to avoid this issue by tricks, and he has dominated you, and you're a little afraid of him, and he has fooled you. You think he's in superior legal position, so that you'll give him some money. But this is cheating. We shall not give him any more money. Don't pay him any. First of all, bring a criminal case against him. So why you should be disappointed and afraid of him? Our position is very, very strong. And this is Prabhupada. He knew all the legal angles also in India. If Mr. N was threatening violence, and that also was not grounds for quitting the land. Devotees were on the land legally and should seek police protection. Therefore, I say that you boys cannot deal very well in these matters because you're too timid. Now, whatever you like, you may do. Immediately, criminal case should be taken, and you're not doing because he's bluffing you. He says big words and makes threats, and you believe him foolishly and do like he says. That I shall not do. Prabhupada's conclusive advice was that devotees go to the magistrate and tell him, we gave Mr. N money and now he is threatening violence to drive us away. They should not be afraid. Prabhupada had not come to Vrindavan only to lecture. He wanted to begin construction on his new property. And the news from Bombay did not distract him from his purpose. Every day he would have the devotees hold a Sankirtan procession from the Radha Damodar temple to the property at Ramanreti. He would also go out occasionally to see the site, still nothing more than a grass hut, a wire fence, and a small stock of building materials. Subal, the disciple in charge of construction, was slow and reluctant, and Prabhupada sent for Tamalkrish Goswami to come from Bombay and take charge. See, Tamalkrish Maharaj was like his right-hand man. Wherever there was trouble, he would send Tamalkrish Maharaj. First, he sent him from Vrindavan to Bombay to take care of Bombay issue, and now come back to Vrindavan to take charge of construction. And similarly, he went to Mayapur to buy the land and also for construction. Maharaj was there. Early one morning, Subal left the land at Ramanreti where he had been staying and approached Srila Prabhupada on the roof of the Radha Damodar temple. Prabhupada, he said, I'm having so much difficulty. I don't have time to read. I can't chant my rounds properly. I can't think of Krishna. I'm always thinking of how this contractor is cheating us, or I'm thinking of signing checks for labor and materials. It's just too much. All these things on my mind are stopping me from thinking of Krishna. Prabhupada, look at Prabhupada's reply. Do you think Arjun was simply meditating on Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra? Prabhupada replied, do you think Arjun was sitting in yogic trance while on the battlefield Krishna worked? No, he was fighting. He was killing for Krishna. He was thinking of all the soldiers he had to kill for Krishna. Thinking of the checkbook, thinking of the men, thinking of the contractors. This is also like Arjuna's thinking. This is Krishna's service. You should not worry about thinking of Krishna directly. Arjun wasn't sitting before Krishna in a trance, meditating on his form. He was engaged in Krishna's service. Similarly, this is Krishna's service and you should engage. Your life is full of Krishna's service and that is very good. Subal was still unsatisfied. He complained to Prabhupada that the other devotees would not cooperate with him. He wanted to go into seclusion in Vrindavan for the rest of his life and chant, instead of becoming a full-time preacher in ISKCON. Prabhupada said, what do you mean? No one will listen to you. You think that means they are defective? No, you are defective. Prabhupada raised his voice. If you are preaching and no one will listen, don't think you should go away and discuss and save yourself by chanting. No, that's not our line. We must qualify ourselves so they will listen. Do you know the story of Mr. Beachem? Subal shook his head. No one would buy his medicine. Prabhupada continued. So he became anxious. Still he tried. And one day a man approached him in his shop and asked if he had any Beacham's powder. And in excitement that someone had asked for his medicine, he died. Similarly, better we spend our whole life and die just to make one person Krishna conscious. That is our life. To become so absorbed in preaching Krishna, whether in Vrindavan or anywhere, we must save all these asuras from destroying the world. In stressing active service and practical results, Prabhupada was exactly following the teachings and example of his spiritual master. According to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, to chant in a secluded place and not preach was a cheating process. Devotional service means practical work for Krishna. The simple, positive way to control the senses was to engage them fully in the service of Krishna. Active service was the topmost yoga. Prabhupada told Subal, a fact that he had repeatedly explained in his books. In the recently published second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, he had written, here it is clearly mentioned that the inhabitants of Vrindavan were extensively busy in the hard labor of their day's work. And due to the day's hard labor, they were engaged in sound sleep at night. So practically they had very little time to devote to meditation or to other paraphernalia of spiritual activities. But factually, they were engaged in the highest spiritual activities only. Everything done by them was spiritualized because everything was dovetailed in the relationship with Lord Krishna. The central point of activities was Krishna, and as such, the so-called activities in the material world were saturated with spiritual potency. That is the advantage of the way of Bhakti Yoga. One should discharge one's duty on Lord Krishna's behalf, and all one's actions will be saturated with Krishna's thought, the highest pattern of trance and spiritual realization. A very practical example Prabhupada gave and the instructions. Yes, sir. You just need to go on serving. Of course, that doesn't mean we should not try to chant or read or hear Prabhupada's lectures or other devotees' lectures. We should try as much as you have to try to make a balance. But can't run away from service to some secluded grounds that I don't want to sit and chant. And since we are not at that level, like Haridas Thakur was chanting, we will, after a while, we'll get bored and go away. So that's not the process. As far as possible, Prabhupada engaged each disciple in a certain service according to the particular disciple's psychophysical nature. But everyone had to take up some kind of work for Krishna. Since Prabhupada desired to build a temple in Vrindavan, then whoever would help him do it, whether they were trained or not, or whether it was their tendency or not, whoever offered him assistance would become very dear to him and to Lord Krishna. When a householder couple, Gurudas and Yamuna, agreed to remain in Vrindavan to help Prabhupada build the temple, Prabhupada welcomed it and shared with them the intention of his plan. If you can construct a nice temple in Vrindavan for me too in this way, I shall be eternally grateful. Because we are a worldwide movement of Krishna, and if we don't have a nice place at Vrindavan, then what will be the use? Vrindavan is Krishna's land, and in future, many of our disciples will go there just to see, along with many tourists and other friends. So therefore, we must have sufficient place for them. I know that you're not trained up for being construction manager. Neither that job must be very tasteful to you, but because you're a sincere devotee of Krishna, he is giving you all strength and intelligence how to do it. That is what we want. That is advancement in Krishna consciousness. So whether we have some training in some particular service or whether we have inclination to do it, if we just do it as a sincere servant of Krishna. And moreover, Krishna is very, very grateful for even little service if somebody does. What to speak of taking so much of trouble, going through so much of austerity to do some service which we have no inclination for. How much Krishna must be appreciated? How much Prabhupada must be appreciated? By the time Prabhupada and most of his disciples left Vrindavan at the end of Kartik, relation between his disciples and the residents of Vrindavan had improved. The people of Vrindavan were impressed by the devotees' daily Sankirtan procession to Raman Reti, and they were impressed by Prabhupada. Although Prabhupada felt that much time had been wasted, it had been a year since Mr. S had offered them the land. He was now hopeful. So Prabhupada had to be clear that all these three big temples, to push on his disciples, to motivate them, to encourage them to do more service. And disciples all over to send money to India to build these temples. Normally, people falsely claim, oh, ISKCON is sending money out of India to America and Europe. Look at these temples. They were built by Devotees sending money from America to India. ISKCON projects were developing all over the world and all were struggling. The devotees' only means of income was from the sales of books and to some degree from their spiritual sky incense business. So that was the Agarbatti business they had started. As yet, Prabhupada had no architectural plan for his Vrindavan project, but he determined to gather from his book fund and from devotees enough money, materials, and labor. One day, he went to the building site and asked a devotee to mix a little cement, and with his own hand, he laid down the first concrete for the foundation. So anxious he was to serve Krishna. Hyderabad, November 11, 1970. Prabhupada had come to Hyderabad for a Pandal program. Big crowds attended his lectures, and wherever he went, even while getting into and out of his car, people surrounded him to touch his lotus feet. Although Hyderabad had been suffering from drought, a few days after Prabhupada's arrival, rains came. One newspaper suggested that the Harinam Kirtan, Srila Prabhupada and his devotees performed so enthusiastically, must have ended the drought. Prabhupada agreed, because in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, by yajna, parjanya, or rains happen. And by the rains, all the food grains are cultivated and people eat. So everything depends on the yajna. But when the rains happen because of yajna, they don't overflood every place. So proper amount of rain. If it is flooding, that is something else. Srila Prabhupada met with Mr. N, who was visiting Hyderabad from Bombay. Shyamsundar still had a cordial relationship with Mr. N. But because Mr. N had been fond of his 3-year-old daughter Saraswati, so he went to Mr. N and convinced him to speak to Prabhupada. Mr. N agreed, but being suspicious that Prabhupada might try to use mystic power to persuade him to do something against his will, he brought a guru with him, thinking the guru would counteract Prabhupada's spiritual power. So guru, or it was some kind of yogi he brought. Mr. N, his guru, and Shyamsundar all came to the home of Panilal Prithi, where Prabhupada was staying. Prabhupada met informally with his guests, conversing with them over prasadam, until he yawned, and Mr. N's guru said, "Oh, Swami, you must be very tired. We should not disturb you now. You should rest and we may talk later." "Oh, yes," Prabhupada replied, "I am very tired." Although Prabhupada was translating books, but this was actually Prabhupada once said that if somebody says, "Oh, you must be tired, you should take rest," means that person himself is tired and he wants to take rest. So Mr. N and his guru excused themselves and retired to their learning room. Now look at here all this. After a few minutes, Prabhupada called Tamalkesh Goswami into his room. Someone asked if you are tired. Prabhupada said, means he is tired. If you go into the other room, you will see that they are sleeping. He instructed Tamal Krishna to carefully awaken Mr. N without disturbing his guru and bring him in. We just don't know how many powers Prabhupada had. Tiptoeing into the room, Tamal Krishna found both Mr. N and his guru asleep on the beds. He went over to Mr. N, touched his arm, and said quietly, Mr. N, wake up. Prabhupada would like to speak with you. Come quickly." Mr. N, being roused from his slumber, obediently walked into Prabhupada's room, forgetting his guru friend. So here in this book, his name is not given. It's always called Mr. N. So obviously, he wasn't called Mr. N when they were communicating. The Satsuru Maharaj and the devotee decided they just didn't want to reveal his identity, so he might feel bad. Or not him, he died actually, but his children might feel bad later on. For 2 hours, Prabhupada talked with Mr. N. And by the end of the discussion, they had worked out a new sales agreement. So Guruji was sleeping in the other room. Tamal Krishna, Tamal Krishna and Shyam Sundar, working in a separate room, drafted and typed the document, while Prabhupada and Mr. N settled the final legal points. Then Mr. N signed the agreement, while his guru friend continued sleeping soundly. Later that day, Tamal Krishna confided to Srila Prabhupada, I am so disturbed by these dealings that I can't chant my rounds properly. That is natural, Prabhupada replied. Sometimes when I am disturbed, I also. But I can see that I am making spiritual advancement. Even so, Tamal Krishna admitted. Prabhupada nodded. I used to think how to avoid difficult situations, Tamal Krishna said, but now I think I should not run away from them. Yes, said Prabhupada, we should welcome these. They give us the opportunity to advance more. Shyam Sundar and Tamal Krishna Goswami flew back to Bombay with Mr. N that afternoon. According to the new terms, ISKCON would pay Mr. N the 5 lakhs of rupees for the government tax, and in return, Mr. N would execute the deed. But there was also a new time limit, 3 weeks. And the devotees would have to work fast. Prabhupada himself would soon come to Bombay to settle the matter once and for all. Bombay, November 25th, 1972. Although Prabhupada had come to Bombay with hopes of finishing the land transaction, Mr. N was still delaying, despite the new agreement. Obviously, his stalling was simply part of his plan to cheat ISKCON. Srila Prabhupada waited many days in Bombay, finally departing for a Pandal program in Ahmedabad. He left behind instructions for his disciples to get the deed on the new terms, or else to take back the original 2 lakh of rupees paid as a down payment. While Srila Prabhupada was away, however, Shyam Sundar, Tamal Krishna Goswami, and others began talking about how even if they could one day get the deed of the Juhu property to develop Hare Krishna land the way Prabhupada had envisioned would be practically impossible. Shyam Sundar argued that even if they got the land, how could they really expect to build a big temple and hotel out there in the jungle? It just wouldn't work. Meanwhile, from Ahmedabad, Prabhupada continued to wage his Bombay campaign, and he requested Mr. N and Mr. D to come to Ahmedabad to try and make a settlement. They declined. So Mr. D was the original lawyer of his firm. In Bombay, the devotees learned that if they wanted to get back the down payment as well as the money they had deposited towards a 5 lakh gains tax, then they would have to cancel the new agreement. They were confused, and their time was running out. One morning, one of Prabhupada's disciples, Vishaka Devi Dasi, arrived in Ahmedabad from Bombay. Prabhupada called for her and told her to return to Bombay immediately with the message. Out of concern that his leaders in Bombay not make a wrong decision and decide to relinquish the land, he told her to tell them that they should not, under any circumstances, cancel the agreement with Mr. N. Actually, he said, this is not a women's job, but everyone else here is either engaged in the Pandal or has not been with us long enough to do this task. Vishaka took the next train out of Ahmedabad and arrived in Bombay the following morning. But what Prabhupada had foreseen had already happened. The devotees had cancelled the sales agreement. They were convinced that to get the land would be a mistake, and their lawyers had agreed, pointing out that if the devotees wanted to retrieve their money, they should cancel the agreement immediately. When the devotees heard Prabhupada's message from Ahmedabad, confusion reigned. They now had no legal standing, no claim to the land, and they had failed to carry out Prabhupada's desire. Giriraj phoned Prabhupada in Ahmedabad to tell him what had happened. Bhaktivedanta Swami here, Prabhupada said, as he took the telephone, Giriraj was saying that a devotee had come from Ahmedabad with a message. Yes, Prabhupada said, what's the point? Finally, Giriraj blurted out that they had cancelled the sales agreement. Prabhupada was silent. Then, in a voice that expressed both anger and resignation, he said, then everything is finished. Okay, so more fight will happen, and we'll read later on. So we'll stop here, see anybody has any questions or comments.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna.
Chalo, you are
Jai
safe.
Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
Thank
Jai
you,
Shri Prabhupada.
Prabhuji.